You're loaded heavy at the top of a long mountain grade. To save a little fuel, you slip the transmission out of gear into neutral and let the truck start rolling on its own. It goes quiet, the engine no longer pulling you forward or holding you back. Just 80,000 pounds gathering speed on gravity alone, and it feels like free money. But the grade keeps dropping, the truck keeps building speed, and the only thing left to slow it down is the brake pedal under your foot. Brakes alone were never meant to hold a loaded truck down a mountain. The old hands had a name for this trick. They called it the Georgia Overdrive. And for something that was supposed to save money, it got drivers killed for decades. Start with the name, because the name is the first trick. Georgia Overdrive sounds like a gear. Overdrive is a real thing, the tall top gear that lets an engine loaf along at low speed and sip fuel out on the highway. So you would expect the Georgia Overdrive to be some special, extra tall gear, a fuel-saving setting built for long hauls. It was nothing of the kind. The Georgia Overdrive was neutral, no gear at all. The joke buried in the name was bitter and exact. Drop a truck into neutral on a downgrade and it will overdrive itself down the mountain on gravity alone, gaining speed while burning nothing, as if it had found a gear taller than top. The name came from the long grades on Interstate 75, where the road comes down out of the Georgia mountains through the Appalachian foothills, and drivers used it there and passed it down. For a while, it was one of the most common fuel-saving habits in all of trucking. It was also one of the surest ways to end up at the bottom of a hill in pieces. To understand why anybody would coast a loaded truck down a mountain out of gear, you have to understand the era and the math. This was the 1960s, the 70s, on into the 80s, before the Jake brake was standard on every rig, before electronic engines, back when a driver's fuel bill came straight out of what he brought home. Diesel cost money, margins were thin, and a long downgrade looked like free real estate. Think about it from the seat. You spend all day burning fuel to drag a heavy load up and over the mountains. Then you finally crest the top, and for once gravity is on your side, offering to pull you down the far side for nothing. Why keep the engine in gear, still using fuel and fighting that free ride, when you could slip into neutral and coast the entire grade for the price of nothing at all? Save a little diesel on every hill. Do it for 20 years, and it adds up to real money. The logic was clean, and that is exactly what made it so dangerous. It paid you a small reward every single time. It did not kill you. So drivers kept doing it, hill after hill, right up until the hill that was too long. This is what the fuel math left out. When a truck is in gear rolling downhill, the engine is doing more than making power. It is also holding the truck back. The pistons and the compression fight against the wheels, dragging on the whole driveline. And that drag is a brake that costs nothing and never fades. Drivers call it engine braking, and on a long grade, it is the thing that lets you come down at a steady, controlled speed without ever leaning on the pedal. Now drop that same truck into neutral. The engine disconnects from the wheels completely. That free, endless brake vanishes in an instant, and now there is exactly one thing standing between 80,000 pounds and the bottom of the mountain: the service brakes. The friction breaks out at the wheels. The trouble is that friction brakes have one real weakness, and it is heat. Every time they slow the truck, they turn motion into heat, and they can only shed so much of it before it starts to build faster than it can escape. Hold a loaded truck back down a long grade on nothing but those brakes, and the heat climbs and climbs until the friction material gets so hot it stops gripping. The pedal goes soft. Then it goes to the floor. They call it brake fade, and once it starts on a downgrade, it does not get better on its own because the truck only gathers more speed from there, and a faster, heavier truck needs even more braking that you no longer have. That is the trap. A truck in neutral with faded brakes has stopped being a truck. It is a runaway, and a loaded rig can pick up speed until it is doing 80 or 90 miles an hour down a mountain road with nothing left to stop it. If you have ever seen those steep gravel ramps climbing off the side of a mountain highway, the ones with the big warning signs, those runaway truck ramps exist for this exact moment. They were built to catch the trucks that made this bet and lost it. And drivers did lose it. This is the part that turns the Georgia Overdrive from a clever trick into something much darker. Runaway trucks are not some rare freak event on a mountain grade. They happen, and they kill people every single year, and coasting down a long grade out of gear is one of the surest ways to turn a loaded truck into one. It killed the men who did it, and it killed the people in the cars sitting in front of them at the bottom of the hill. That is why today, coasting downhill in neutral is not just frowned on. It is against the law in most states. Somewhere in the vehicle code in plain language, it says, a driver may not coast down a grade with the transmission in neutral or the clutch held down. Laws like that do not get written for things that never go wrong. They get written because too many trucks came off the bottom of a mountain too fast, and somebody finally decided the trick had to be banned outright. Every experienced mountain hand knows the sharp, hot stink of another truck's brakes cooking on a long descent. And every one of them knows exactly what it means when a rig comes past them going too fast and far too quiet. And here is the cruelest part of the whole story. On a modern truck, the Georgia Overdrive does not even save fuel, not one drop. A modern diesel does not sip fuel while it rolls down a hill in gear. It shuts the fuel off completely. The moment you lift your foot off the throttle going downhill in gear, the computer cuts the injectors dead because now the wheels are turning the engine instead of the engine turning the wheels. So there is no reason to burn anything at all. That means coasting down a grade in gear burns virtually no fuel and hands you all of that free engine braking at the same time. Neutral burns the very same nothing and throws the braking away for nothing in return. So the deadly little trick that old drivers dropped into neutral to save a few cents does not save a single cent on a modern truck. And here is the harder truth underneath that. Even on the old trucks, the savings were tiny. A cup of diesel here and a cup there. Men were dying at the bottom of mountains to save the price of a cup of coffee. And yet, the idea behind it never actually died. It got civilized. Look inside a modern automated truck transmission, and some of them do something on purpose that would have gotten a driver a ticket 40 years ago. They coast the truck in neutral downhill deliberately to save fuel. Volvo builds it right into their automatics and calls it eco-roll. On a gentle grade, the transmission slips itself into neutral and lets the truck roll free, saving the exact fuel the old-timers were chasing. The difference is the thing standing guard over it. A computer. It only does it on grades shallow enough to stay safe, and the instant the driver touches the brake or reaches for the engine brake, or the truck drifts past, a speed the computer has decided is the limit. It drops itself straight back into gear and grabs the engine, braking again, faster than any human could react. The exact move that killed drivers for decades is now a fuel-saving feature you can order from the factory. The only thing they had to add to make it safe was a machine watching for the one mistake a tired driver used to make. So that is the Georgia Overdrive, a trick that made perfect sense on paper that paid off a little every single time. And then, on the one grade that ran a little too long, or the one set of brakes that was a little too worn, took everything at once. It is mostly gone now, retired by the Jake brake, by engines that coast for free, and by laws that exist only because too many drivers found the bottom of the hill the hard way. But a lot of you watching ran these mountains back when the Georgia Overdrive was just something drivers did and nobody thought twice about. So I want to hear it. Did you ever knock it into neutral to save fuel on a long grade, or ride with an old hand who swore by it? Did you ever have to use a runaway ramp or come up on a truck that couldn't stop? Tell the story in the comments, because there are fewer people every year who lived it. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and watch the next video above.